Hello everyone, back with another video. So today I wanted to talk about a subject related to Christianity because I'm a Christian and I wanted to give my thoughts on something. So I wanted to talk about the field of apologetics, which if you're watching this and you don't know what apologetics is, it's basically I guess I would call it a system of argumentation that's meant to defend the Christian faith from a like historical scientific viewpoint, to confirm things in the Bible are true. Like they make critiques of evolution, or they, you know, talk about historical things or that confirm things in the Bible, that sort of stuff. And I know that there are some Christians who believe that learning apologetics is very important, that it's very crucial, that every Christian should learn apologetics, but I'm kind of a different opinion in that I've really never been able to get into apologetics. And the reason why is because I feel like it's fundamentally denying faith. So I guess the reason a lot of people think that we should learn apologetics is because they think that if we have scientific, you know, things backing up our faith, then that'll bring more people to Christ. And I like that idea in theory, except I feel like that's kind of, you're reducing the faith to simply an empirical proposition, which is not faith at all. It's essentially just saying like, well, okay, I'm just going where the facts lead me. Here's what the facts lead me. And so now I'm a Christian. I mean, I don't think that's really how it works, because you're not actually taking any step of faith and believing it. You're just accepting the data as you see it. And, it doesn't take faith for me to believe that, I'm in a house right now, because it's just observably true. But, the Bible talks about faith a lot and talks about how we need to have faith, and that, it's only through faith that we can be saved. So if we're simply trying to reduce this to a rational proposition, then it kind of takes faith out of the equation, doesn't it? And, like let's say you do make apologetics the basis of your faith or the grounds for your faith, then are you saying that if you find evidence that contradicts it somewhere, then you won't be a Christian anymore if you find proof elsewhere? I mean, I've seen people who've been reasoned out of their faith by being presented things that say that supposedly show the Bible is false or what have you, and so they cease being Christians. And I mean, I actually remember reading a story years ago online of a girl who was raised as a Christian, and she was involved in her church for years, and she studied apologetics, and she knew all the right answers to give for different objections people had to Christianity. And yet in this article she wrote, she was talking about how she became an atheist. So clearly she had all the apologetics arguments, she knew them all very well, but she still ended up turning away from Christianity and from God altogether. And one thing I remember was that she actually talked about how she just didn't feel like God was real, and she couldn't actually feel a real connection with God. So her rational, reasonable faith didn't save her. She still became an unbeliever. And I think that's interesting, because apologetics isn't it shows that some people aren't going to believe. And yet I hear stories of people who were not believers and who became to Christ, and they did so because they had spiritual experiences, or they felt like they were in tune with God, and that was what led them to Christianity. And I think that's kind of what my point is that most people aren't reasoned into faith. It's an emotional heart connection to the Lord that they feel, and that's what brings them to faith. So, while I do appreciate the apologetics people for what they're trying to do, I feel like at the end of the day, it's not really going to get the results they think it will. Or, we have to, I think it's, I mean, I guess you're probably going to hear me, and some people will say, well, are you advocating then for, people to be completely irrational and unreasonable and unreasoned, rather, as far as how they approach approach the world, how they approach the question of whether God exists. I mean, in a sense, I'm just saying we have to be, it has to come down to faith. There has to be some point where you say, I can't prove this. I can't say for certain whether this did or didn't happen based on my own direct experience or evidence, but I have faith that it's true. And you know, I'm saying all this, and you might be surprised to know that I'm kind of a skeptical person by nature. Like, I do struggle with faith sometimes. I do struggle with believing. There's that rational part of my brain that says, like, well, this stuff you read in the Bible, is it really true? How do we know that this is all true? I mean, and I have my reasons for believing. I have my own personal reasons for believing that are not just empirical reasons, but you know, I've had moments where I felt like I was really in touch with God, and that fuels my faith. So I guess as long as we're on the subject, I could talk a little bit about how, it was probably in my mid 20s I became familiar with the whole concept of the internet atheist, or the fedoras, tippers as they kind of became to be known. And, while a lot of these people are just kind of obnoxious edgelords, they didn't, trying to interact with these people actually did make me kind of realize something along these lines. There was this one guy who I always used to interact with, and he's one of these, like, well, can you prove God exists? Like, and he's always, that was like his comeback to everything. Like, can you prove it? Can you prove it? And I realized, in a sense, well, he's actually right. I can't prove God exists. I believe God exists, but I can't empirically prove he exists. And I realized faith has to be something that you come to on your own. You can't be reasoned into it. And, I'm not saying that all these internet fedoras were the most intellectually honest people. They kind of they position themselves as being like, well, I'm the rational, empirical one here who's just seeking the truth. But I know a lot of them are really kind of dogmatically committed to atheism in many cases. Maybe in some cases there are genuinely open people, but for many of these internet edgelords, that wasn't their primary motivation. It wasn't to find the truth, or it was to essentially elevate their own wisdom and understanding to the pinnacle of human knowledge. So, yeah, I mean, I could make a whole separate video about my thoughts on how a lot of, not going to say all, but how many atheists intellectually operate, because it's a very interesting pattern. But yeah, so to sum up what I'm saying here, just I respect the apologetics people in a certain sense, on a certain level. I appreciate what they're trying to do, but I think it's more effective to really try and reach people's hearts, because that's how I think God intends for us to come to him, through our hearts, not just through a merely fact-based empirical analysis of things. So I'll put faith over reason any day. All right. Talk to you later.